Hey, what's up guys? Mendel here. Hope you're all doing awesome and wonderful. So in the previous video, we did like an unboxing of the Cubase Rock Pack, which features the multi-tracks of a short rock song I wrote, real drums recorded in the Pro Studio, real guitars, bass, you name it, everything you want. Had to have like a good like rock mix, like a rock song, and can be downloaded right now for free through the Steinberg download assistant. And in this video, we're gonna start mixing the drums. So as always, let's dig right in. Here we go. All right, so here we are in Cubase. Now, if you open the session like in the previous video, it should look at something like this when you first open it. Everything is nicely organized. And like I said in the previous video, everything is phase aligned, polarities, like everything's correctly prepped for mixing. You're welcome. Let's first take a listen to the intro of the song and a bit of the first verse. Here we go. Okay, so these drums sound amazing in my opinion. I really love how they sound, and it's really inspiring to work with like drums as good as these. So these drums, I have to give him credit again. These drums were played by Koen Herfst, which is an amazing like powerhouse rock drummer. Love the guy to death. And the drums were recorded at Sand Lane recording facilities. Amazing studio, amazing outdoor gear, amazing desks. Like the drums were recorded on the Neve 5088 desk, if I'm correct. And the amazing engineer there, Jos, he did some great tweaking to get like a great drum sound from the get-go through the desk. Amazing. So let's open the drum folder. Now, for some of you, this might seem intimidating because there are a lot of drum tracks. Here we go. But I know I went through this a tiny bit in the previous video, but since we're focusing on drums now, I'll try to clarify as good as I can. So we have all these drum tracks, and let's first talk about the routing. So we have kick mic, kick mic, kick mic, kick sample, and all of these four go into the kick bus. And the kick bus is routed to kick and snare. Now, same thing with snare. We have the real snares here, the snare mics, which goes into like a real snare mic bus. Both of these mics combined goes to snare bus. We have a snare sample, snare bottom. I'm not using the snare bottom, but if you want in your mix, of course, it's there, which goes to the snare bus. And then, as said before, kick bus and snare bus both go into kick and snare. So basically, the cool thing about that is, let's say if you want to add some high to the kick, but also the snare, you can just put it on the kick or snare bus. Up to you. So then we have the hi-hat, which goes straight to the drums bus. Then we have the toms, which goes to the toms bus, and then everything like that goes to the shells bus. Shells basically kick, snare, and toms. Everything that's like not cymbals basically. Then over here, you see like this Stressor C2 Escape. You might think, what is this about? So during the recording session, we used a distressor compressor during the recording, parallel on the shells. Same thing with the C2. This is a Smart Research C2 compressor, one of my all-time favorite compressor. So, but like I was in the studio, I was like, let's record with it, because then you guys can like use these recordings through real distressors, a real Smart Research C2 compressor, and mix with it. And then when I got the files here, you see Escape, which is my Audioscape bus compressor, and I put everything, also shells like kick, snare, and the toms through it, compress it heavily, and then record it back into it right into Cubase. So you have options if you want to use these pre-recorded parallel compressions. So these three go into the parabus, and then pretty straightforward, you see shells and para, which is basically everything that's shells and the parabus. So then we have the ride, which goes to the drums group, and the China and overheads goes to cymbals. Now you might think, why isn't the ride and the same thing for the hi-hat not going into the cymbals bus? Well, basically, in my opinion, hi-hat and the ride have some transient to it, and I don't want to affect that too much with the compression. So I like to keep those straight. And since I'm not gonna really compress a lot on the drums group, I just want to preserve those transients of the hi-hat and the ride going straight to the drums group, since I will be compressing some of the China and the overheads. And then my favorite part, probably the rooms close, rooms far, room mono. I mean, these rooms sound amazing, especially the rooms far. And all of that goes into the rooms bus, and that goes, of course, to the rooms group. And then you see these MIDI things. So what I did for you guys, I converted all the hits to MIDI, since I'm using the MIDI gate. Like I also said in a previous video, but I just like to repeat to be as clear as possible. I love this Steinberg MIDI gate. It's phenomenal, and it cleans really up. I didn't cut the toms because I just want to preserve as much as possible. If you want to practice editing, probably in the future I'll make an editing video. I'd love to do that for you guys. Let me know in the comments if you want to see that. But for now, I didn't edit the toms or like the space in between. Just use the toms, so as much is preserved as possible. All right, that's a lot of talking, but I just want to be as clear as possible. So when you open this session, you have some understanding of the routing and all that kind of stuff. So let's just listen to the drums for a bit and get a vibe going. So I especially like the room vibe, and this is very important before going into mixing these drums, because I think you need to have like some sort of vision where you want to go with the mix. At least I do. So especially when I listen to the song itself, I really like the natural vibe of the drums, which is, in my opinion, like well, I wouldn't say mainly, but a huge portion of that is the rooms. So for example, if I would mute the rooms, so that way I already have the idea, like I don't want to do like an overly processed, like Nickelback kind of mix, like Dark Horse, which is a really good mix. But for this song, it could be perhaps like a tiny bit less compressed and a bit more loose. So what I always do, I start with the cymbals. Great sounding cymbals, and the big difference for me between mixing metal and like rock, if I would do like a metal track, I would probably filter everything below 500 hertz. Depends on the metal song, of course. But in this case, I like how it sounds. I think perhaps a tiny bit like around the higher frequencies, like some removing. And perhaps add a tiny bit of brightness. It sounds a bit more like hi-fi, whatever that may mean. And that's it. Perhaps some a bit of compression. There's a new compressor in Cubase 12, which sounds really cool. So let's try that. Let's just have fun with it. See how it sounds. Okay, so I think this might be better on rooms, to be honest. Let's try the vintage compressor on these cymbals. That sounds fine by me. Perhaps even a bit less, like a bit less attack, or I mean a bit more attack. Fine, okay, let's go to the kick. So I like to treat the kick mainly on the kick bus. And let's get frequency in here. And mainly on the kick, I like my kick below the bass. So the kick really around that 50 Hertz subby part. So I don't like this. Let's add some 50 Hertz or something. Let's filter off the low stuff we don't need. And let's add some presence. And I really need to hear it in the context of the mix. Bit less subbiness. So let's use this multi-view thing and check how it responds to the bass. Yeah, so my bass is mainly around 100 Hertz, so that's no issue. And let's use a tiny bit of compression. I like the normal compressor on this. Late attack, early release. Okay, let's see how that sounds. Cool, let's go to the snare. Okay, this could use some high. More attack, more brighter. There's some mid thing that I don't like. Okay, let's see how it sounds in context with the snare sample. Okay, and then on the snare bus, which is both the snare and the snare sample, I'm gonna add some high. This should be enough, and let's use the vintage compressor, which sounds really awesome on snares. How it compresses, that sounds so nice during those fills. Bit weak. Nicely compressed. Second in the mix. Okay, so now just a brain thing. I'm gonna mute the solo, everything else, just bass and guitars for me, because I don't want to focus on the solo. I want to check the intro with the flams, how the snare sounds. It's not like a really big rock snare, but I like where it sits in the mix. So I'm just gonna keep it like this for now. So now going to the toms. Normally with toms, like if I would do like a metal mix, I would treat every tom individual. But I think I could get away by just, because I really like how these toms sound. It's like a Tema Star classic kit, I think, which is one of my favorite kits of all time. Koen played amazing. That's also why I didn't use any tom samples. So I think by just cutting some mids and adding some highs, that could be enough for these toms. Speaking of doing that on a toms bus and doing some low filtering. Check it in the mix. I like how it sounds. Gonna add a tiny bit of vintage compression. Okay, that's definitely too much, but we have a cool mix knob here. This should be enough. I don't know. I dig how I'm using less compression like a typical metal mix and let more of the natural flow, like the feel of the drummer do its work. So again, like for example, this fill, I could do like more compression to it, but I know I'm gonna do some compression on the shells bus or blend in more of the parallel compression. So I'm gonna like lean back a bit with the compression on the individual things or on the toms bus and stuff, and see how it goes when I use the parallel compression or compression on the shells bus. I'm not sure what I'm gonna do yet. Okay, so I'm not gonna touch shells a bit. I just want to focus now on the rooms and the cymbals a bit. So for an example with the ride, there's some nasty frequency around here. That's not for me. And on the China, there's some hard China hits towards the end of the song. Done. That's it. Now, for example, hearing that fill, it's on the edge of sounding too sampled in my opinion. But again, I like how it sounds. I mean, you can download these files and you can remove the snare sample if you want. But I really like the vibe it gives. Do you think perhaps I could do the snare sample a bit less? Tiny bit, and perhaps a tiny bit more real snare. Sounds cool. Okay, so now let's go to the. I want to compare a couple things. I want to compare how like a vintage compressor on the Shells bus sounds versus using any of the parallel compressors we recorded, or like my Audioscape bus compressor that I pre-recorded. So let's just use the vintage compressor here. What would I do without this compressor in my life? So let's see, let's do a fair amount of compression. Late attacks, what I like, 30 milliseconds, early release. Perhaps a bit more compression. It does give more energy to the kit. Okay, so I'm gonna turn it on bypass, and now I'm gonna try to see how it sounds with the parallel pre-recorded compressors. Especially, let's check it on the intro. So here we have the distressor. Sounds cool. Okay, let's try the C2. More snappy, also really cool. Let's try my Audioscape. That's the winner. Let's try this. I'm gonna add a tiny bit of high. And then lower the shells bus a tiny bit, because we're adding to it and we want to keep our levels in check. But I'm really digging what this compressor is doing. Let's check it in the mix. Perhaps cut a tiny bit of mids. Or I'm hearing the mids somewhere else. Really like where this is going. Really like where this is going. Now, let's go to the rooms bus. And this is where I think the Racer will shine. All right, so I'm gonna first lower the ceiling of the compressor. I love this. I I I love this. Seriously. Okay, so let's reduce some of that harshness. So we can use the frequency. Let's just for fun use the dynamic EQ frequency. That's what I don't like. So band 6, dynamic EQ, there we go. Like that cleans it up big time. Like when I exaggerate it, and there's a tiny bit of honk, like in the mids, which I don't like. That. And I'm not gonna use the dynamic EQ because I just want to have that like gone forever. Really cool, especially that Razor plugin. So this is without processing. Second in the mix. So I'm lowering the shells bus volume because I noticed the drums are sounding a bit more direct than I wanted to, because I added more of the parallel compressed shells. So I need to reduce the direct, like the original shells a tiny bit to compensate for the volume level. Perhaps the kick could use just a tiny bit of more high. And I do want a tiny bit more room in this mix. I mean, how cool do those rooms sound? I keep repeating myself, I know, but seriously, I'm getting so inspired and stoked. Like, let me mute it first and put it in again. Perhaps these could use a bit less of the mid cut. Lowering that snare bus, that solved it for me, I think. Okay, so now I do want to add some, like a tiny bit of reverb I'm not even sure the snare needs it, but I do like some tiny bit of reverb on the right and the hi-hat. And lastly, let's not forget about the hi-hat. So with hi-hats, there's also like normally around 500 hertz, this really weird mid-honk. Cut that a tiny bit. And a nice thing you can do if we just use the de-esser, you can tame the highs a bit because it's like metal clashing on top of each other. So I have to compensate a bit of gain. So let's put this on 10 and let's put this around 8 then. Okay, so I think I like this for now. I'm just gonna do one more check from the intro. I'm down with this. I like how this sounds. Perhaps I might change a couple things in the next video, like if I EQ the guitars and bass, I might think perhaps some tiny adjustments, but this, man, I'm in love with this. So the China though, okay, so that'll be more for the next video when I do some more automation, like knowing where the mix is going. I might automate it down a bit, but like for a main drum sound, I'm happy with what this is. There is some harshness somewhere in the mix though, before I end this video. I do miss a tiny bit, or perhaps a bit, I wouldn't say tiny bit, but a bit of that suddenness from the kick. So let's add some of that. Okay, that sounds better to me. All right, so I'm really happy with this drum sound. I really like how it sounds, how it feels, how it vibes the song. And in the next video, I'm gonna mix the bass, guitars, what have we here, keys, choir, cleans, and the guitar solo. So make sure you're subscribed to this channel and see you in the next video. All right, cheers, bye.